everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hope everyone had a really good Christmas time and Happy New Year to everyone as well. Big special welcome to Matt Wall, who's joining us from sunny Florida. We just spoke about much warmer temperatures than what we're experiencing at the minute. So, yeah, we won't go there, Matt, will we? But thank you for joining us. And yeah, welcome back to England Golf. Hopefully, you're probably recognising some names and faces on the call from your past experience of you being a regional coach yourself. So, yeah, really cool to have you back on this call tonight in the position that you're in now at Florida State. So yeah, really cool. We wanted to get you online to speak to us all, obviously around the US college system, just because it feels like it's such an ever-changing landscape now. And even for someone like myself, who have obviously experienced the whole thing, the recruitment side of it, and the 4 years out there, even I graduated 2019, so it's not ever so long ago, but it just feels like it's changed so much now. And it's keeping up with it all. And I don't know if like COVID had an effect of that as well, but yeah, it just seems like it's such a massive thing now. So it's just good to have someone who's like proper in the know about it come speak to us. So yeah, so for all you guys on the call as well, I'm just going to kick start off with a couple of questions, but please raise your hand and ask questions and follow up with anything that Matt says. We want this to really use this time. We've got about an hour with Matt really, just to ask the questions that we're all wanting to ask really. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask or pop it in the chat and we'll say it. So just to kickstart the questions then to you, Matt. If you could just like describe the process of someone, how we've got 14 15-year-olds in the regional squad and they're saying, oh yeah, I want to go to the States, and like the parents sort of have no idea. They come to ask us, or like, what do I have to do to go to the college in the States? Like, how would you describe that to somebody?
Thank you, India. First of all, thank you all for having me on here and hopefully listening. I'll try and make it as informative as possible, but it is ever changing. Like you said, India, things do change and rules change and things like that. So I'll do my best to give you the most current and up-to-date information. Having said that, this is going to be pretty opinion based. Every college is pretty unique over here in the way they do things, but we are governed by a few rules. So the first rule to know in terms of getting the process started is communication directly between us as coaches and the players or parents. So we're allowed to start reaching out directly to the player or to parents on June 15th, going into what they're known as the junior year. So between their second, in America, it'd be between their second and third year of high school. So basically, when you have 2 years left, England is in a pretty unique situation with the GCSE system, and GCSEs are actually all you need to get into colleges here. And you can debate that another time as to level of education, but it does mean that you may get some coaches reaching out when these players are what you'd think way too early, 13, 14 years old, because they think they're only 2 years away from graduating. The problem goes is if you go into, is it AS levels now or A levels? If they extend their graduation, it moves the date, and then us as coaches get into problems. So most coaches will stay on the safe side and start to reach out to players in that summer after the GCSEs. I think that's probably the easiest way to do that. June 15th after the GCSEs allows us to communicate directly. Now, that is us reaching out to players. I receive probably 100 emails a month from players reaching out to us, telling us what's going on in their lives, telling us what's their interest level in Florida State, and I'm assuming a lot of colleges across the country. the other thing is we have coaches reach out on behalf of players in at a time, and that's where there's lots of um, generally communication before that June 15th date, but it becomes through a third party, which in this case will be a lot of you guys. And you are, and the players are allowed to reach out to colleges whenever you want, as soon as possible. But us as coaches, we cannot respond directly until that June 15th date. And that has been a rule that has changed in years gone by. It used to be a lot sooner than that, but now it's June 15th, and it keeps everybody. What they're trying to do is push the recruitment to the final 2 years. So starting process. I mean, there's agencies are an option, and this is where getting into the players, depending on the player themselves, and the coaches on board here will have a lot of, I'm sure, a vast range of players from the best in the country to good promising juniors. And the college system here is so vast. It has a place for everybody, honestly. So it really does depend on the level of player as to whether you need an agency. My preference would be no, honestly. Not a big fan of the agencies. I think everything an agent would do, I think you can do yourself, or the players and the parents can do themselves, and coaches can help. An agent is only going to email me a player's name and a profile, which this day and age profiles are so easy to pull up for us. It's our job to do that and find players. So getting an email saying this player is available is nothing to us. It's thanks for that kind of thing. We know that we are employed to go and find players, but to some maybe a level down player who coaches at schools that don't have staff to go and do that, or enough people or people to come out to view tournaments, it might be useful to see use an agent to get your name out there. But honestly, doing the legwork yourself, or the players themselves, sorry, and encouraging a player to do the legwork themselves, to reach out to coaches. All our coaches and schools information are available online. Take the time to kind of go through the process and reach out to coaches, let them know what you're doing, what your interest level is, and do it as soon as possible. Honestly, it would be my first piece of advice to kind of get things kicked off. It's never too early, but it could be too late. Places go quickly, and we'll probably talk about it in a minute. But the timeline is so compressed now that you can really miss the boat pretty quickly. So get out there early and encourage your players to create a profile that they can send, and start narrowing down a list of perhaps where they want to go, ready in plenty of time to kind of get that process going.
Yeah, I never used an agency, and pretty much just did what you said there. Like found a college that you sort of like got an interest in, then you just start sending emails, because like you say, the email addresses are all on the web pages, aren't they? So you can just find all the coaches. And yeah, basically, I think if you've got, and most parents are like, they want to do the best for the child and stuff, so they're willing to put like effort into it. That if it just takes you putting a little golfing resume together, a little video yourself, and like sending it off, I think, like you say, I think it's worth it, rather than paying someone possibly like thousands of pounds to do that you could do it. So I think that's always the thing that I advise first. But then on the other hand, I think with the agencies, it give like a lower down player, say like someone who's not in a national squad, like a sort of a single figure handicapper, say, like you say, because there is a space for everyone out there. Those types of players, they'd probably be the ones that would benefit from the agencies more, would you say?
Yeah, and that's when you're working with the smaller schools, maybe the junior colleges, that, like I say, don't have the staff to go and find players, and they'll build relationships with agencies to keep sending players over. It is very much on who the player is and the profile they
Yeah.
have, the history, the record they have. My advice would be to start on your own, and if you find you're getting no
Yeah.
traction, then maybe try an agency. But it seems to me like the agencies honestly charge a lot of money for relatively easy work. You know, the emails we get are very generic, very much here's a profile of a player. I just feel like you know, you can sit out and do that yourself, and it make it
Yeah.
look more personal to a coach. You know, I appreciate when people write letters that have my name on it, or something about Florida State versus dear coach, this is me. You know, they've taken time and effort to research who we are and what we have here, and maybe researched about former players or past results or something. That goes a long way, versus generic email. I'll be honest, you know, if an agency emails me, unless it's somebody I really know, I'll delete it. I just don't. It's I get so many of them. I can't read. So nothing stands out through an agency. Is I guess the point. Um, to give you an example, this is different. This is a level. I actually received this today. I don't know if you see this. A player that I've never heard of, a girl out of Missouri, sent me this box with her
Wow.
pictures on and a cap with her logo on it. I won't tell you who it is, but that's the first time I've ever seen that. But these players are getting creative, but they're doing it themselves. And this is a player that unfortunately won't be the profile that we need, but they're going out and above and beyond to make their name known.
Mm.
Um, I think a big part of it, though, is educating or having somebody like yourselves around the players to let people know the true extent of the college system. You know, there is levels to it. You People look at the more famous names. You know, hopefully Florida State's a famous name, but you could probably look at the college system very much like a football. You know, there's conferences and divisions, and you might say, oh, it's the Premier League and Bundesliga and League One, the kind of equivalent is the top levels, but it goes down. You know, it goes all the way down. So if you have a top level player at the top tier of your national teams, um, your Premier League teams, your Florida States, we're going to be looking at them. But there is a team for somebody who's in a, let's say, League One, League Two position. There are conferences below us and divisions below us that keep going and keep giving opportunities to players. So anybody with a drive, serious drive to play competitive golf in the US, whilst they're being educated, is a has an opportunity.
Definitely. Jamie, do you got a question?
It was just to expand on something you said, Matt. You said obviously one thing you mentioned was a personal touch, but is there anything in particular that you look for in a player's profile or a player's resume when they send it to you? Are there any things that are more powerful than others?
Yeah, honestly, what we need to know, like I said, we're looking for players. So if we get an email from a player that we know but we can't reach out to, what we really need is contact information, coaches' information. We need all their data and information so that when the time comes, we have it accurate, ready to go. We can reach out on June 15th. If we know all their background team as such, we can start reaching out and understanding. So a lot of it, honestly, is contact information and details so that, you know, with WAGA rankings and tournament results, everything is online now. So if we have identified a player early, we are watching. We are watching results come in. You know, that it does come down to again what level of player. But I'm going to use us as an example. You know, if you have a top level junior player, we are watching them 3, 4 years out and tracking the scores, tracking the results, but we don't know everything about them. It goes way beyond golf performance as to when we get into the recruiting phase. So that June 15th date, we need to be able to reach out straight away and set up contact. So um, everything from every coach they use, you know, these guys and girls, all their swings are on social media these days. We're researching that. We are watching everything on social media. It's kind of Big Brotherish, but we are watching what the players do. So honestly, Jamie and everyone, it is information. It's parents' information, parents' phone numbers, email addresses, actual mailing address, because you may be mailed a lot of items and details from the various colleges. That plus upcoming schedule or any schedule changes is important, because upcoming schedule just makes sure we don't miss any maybe smaller events that they're playing in that aren't online or aren't readily available. Schedule is really key. But if you put on some contact details of maybe coaches, then those coaches may well get a phone call saying, "Hey, can you tell me about Steve Smith and what they're up to, and tell me about the character." That
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Steve. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Matt. Steve Wilson, question.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks, India. Matt, just outside of the golf specific data points that you look for, what kind of weighting do you give the academic side, the culture fit, those I guess non-tangible elements that you can't find on social media or things that you can't necessarily see through the internet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think talking about the academic part first, I think is probably important. Really, really important, actually, and your players should never underestimate that. We are a school, we are a university, and the players have to know that they have to go to school to remain eligible, they have to compete. And if you're failing in school, you will not be allowed to play. So that's just the fundamentals of it, the basics of it. We take academics extremely seriously. We are a school that is, I wouldn't say the top level demanding in terms of, your Harvards, your Princetons of the world. These are the top level schools academically, but we're a high level school that performs highly in athletics and education. What we look for is to ensure that the grades are high enough and sustained over the few years, so that we know we're not going to have problems getting them to school, getting them to class. We'll take risks occasionally on an outstanding player, but it backfires. We've had one recently that some of the coaches on here will know about. We can take risks on players. If they don't turn up in the classroom and don't get the grades, it's a big problem for us. So as a safety net, we are looking for high level grades, and that's boys and girls. The kids often tell us they want to come here to play golf, but if they don't do the schoolwork, it's game over for them. So they don't have to be all A's. It doesn't have to be all A's, but high level grades that we can see we're not gonna have to suspend them for any reason or put them in any academic issues, because it just takes time off playing the golf course. Every school is different. Like I said, this everything I say is very much my opinion based, and where we are at Florida State, you'll get different levels again, education wise. If somebody isn't great in school, and there is junior colleges available that can get them up to the level to get into a bigger school like ours. So if you have somebody that is struggling in school, great golfer, but struggling in school, there is still options for them. If they fail the GCSEs, there is still options for them, but they'd have to go to a smaller school and work their way into it. So there is still options for every level of academic student. But at the top level, we as coaches need to know that the players can get the job done in the classroom and free up as much practice time as possible. So academics is hugely important. If you have a player that says they're going to go to college, but they're not showing any interest in school, they need to wake up very, very quickly. Beyond the golf metrics, the golf metrics gets us interested. That gets us kind of interested in the player. That's kind of what piques our belief or piques our interest, and would allow us to dig deeper. What we're then looking for, honestly, it becomes more character based. This is where that June 15th date plus all the following recruitment becomes so important. Character is so huge for us. You know, we're in a situation where we see these players every day. It's not like a camp situation or a lesson situation where you see them once a week in an isolated environment. We see them every day through thick and thin, you know, good and bad. We see these characters every day. So if they come across as a personality that we don't like, there's more players out there that, you know, we would rather spend our time with. For 4 years, every day for 4 years is a long time. And it goes both ways. The players need to be in the same mode testing the coaches out too. You know, if a player comes and doesn't like a coach, it's a big deal. They will not want to be around a coach for 4 years that they don't like. So strong character, strong personality. I think being coachable is huge. Somebody who's wanting and willing to learn is a huge factor. But these are questions that are answered by us watching parents and watching the players play and speaking with the parents and quizzing them. The recruitment becomes like an interview process. We're asking questions to try and see what the players' mindsets are in certain situations. And that's where we'll be digging into you as coaches to ask what they're like. You know, how do they respond to adversity, and what's their work ethic like? We find that we get more honesty from coaches, third parties, than every player is going to tell us they're the hardest worker. Every player. We've not had anybody that says, "Nah, I don't really work as hard." It's every player, no matter what, will tell us they are the most hardworking player. They're going to tell us they're going to give us everything, and the great leader. You know, they're going to say what you expect to hear in an interview. So we're going to be asking more harder questions of you guys. So give me the scoop on Johnny. Like, what's he really like? Or, you know, what's Jane like? Give us the detail. Give us some examples of how she's reacted to when times are hard. It's always easy when it's going well, but when times are hard, they're not playing well. Give us examples of how these players have responded to it. Are they going to quit when it gets tough? Are they going to, you know, grind it out? Give me the truth. And honesty goes a hell of a long way from you guys and from us, to us making offers to players. You know, we'd rather know warts and all what we're getting into, so that we're not burnt on the far end of it. We do a lot of research, do a lot of talking to outside agencies, outside people other than the player, or the parents, to just make sure the character we're getting. And we'll be watching when people think we're not watching too. Often, you know, when I'm at tournaments, yes, I watch the players on the golf course, but I watch them warm up. I watch how they interact with their parents and how they treat their coaches, and I'm watching them post round. What are they doing? What are their habits post round? To see the reality of a lot of different situations, especially if they've played poorly. What are they going to do? You know, it's all really, really important information. We can gather a lot more from those moments pre-round, post-round, and their interactions with people than sometimes we can just watching them make a bunch of pars on a golf course. You know, it's really, really important that we see that. And the honesty coming from players, especially if there isn't an opportunity to see them, which you will get at some smaller schools. Just don't have the budget to come over and see these players in person. So having an honest review from you as coaches and managers, and it goes a long way to building trust in a relationship. So when you have future players, a coach can come back and say, "You were spot on when you told me about Johnny. You were spot on. So tell me about Timmy." You know, they'll trust you as a contact versus just what the players say. Like, say, you've heard it, you've all heard it. Players say they're working hard. You've given a lesson and come back 2 weeks and say how you've been doing, and you know they've not worked on it, but they've told you they have. You've all been through that, and we see it every day, all day.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, I guess it might be a personal thing, but I guess sometimes I find myself and the coach finds himself just kind of balancing that kind of playing statistics and what we look for from a scoring perspective, and versus those kind of difficult to describe, slightly more subjective behaviors, and kind of what weighting you give. And we put a little bit of emphasis on, as you say, how they warm up, how they interact with other players, how they kind of speak to their parents after a bad round, and what do they do after the event? Do they go to the practice ground? Do they work on some of the problems they faced on the course? And I think that for us plays an important part as to how we bring somebody into the regional squad. So it's just interesting to kind of hear that you place some emphasis on the non-technical side of things that it's difficult perhaps to see unless you're there, or you get feedback on from parents or coaches or from somebody that is kind of somewhat independent and removed from the player themselves.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I actually see us as a moment in a player's life very similar to where you guys are positioned in a regional or national team squad. We are not the end, hopefully not the end of their player's journey. We're just a stepping stone, and we generally have a very fixed, hopefully 4 years, but sometimes it's less, 4 years with a player. We're not going to take risks and break our backs on the you can never guarantee winning. That's the problem. So if you bring in players that are great on paper and have won a lot in the past, doesn't mean continued success. And that's at a certain level as well. You got to think that's at junior level. They've had a sustained success. So we're looking for all those external and extra elements that we know is going to keep a player on the right trajectory. If somebody's a great player and winning a lot of junior but is lazy, or we're going to butt heads with all the time and just find hard work, we're just going to pass on it. And it's hard to pass on a great player, but there's no guarantees they're going to be great at the college level and then on to professional level. We like the players that we would maybe not have reached that level in terms of sustained winning, let's say, but show all the hallmarks of somebody that's going to get there. If you can prove a trajectory of improvement, plus they're a great character and they're going to keep working for it, in their 4th year, that'll probably bear fruit and give us then the chance of winning. But and this might be the personal part. Winning is great. It's great, but it's not everything for us. We want to see players get a great degree and go on to do great things in whatever career they have. We are judged on that. We are judged on how many people graduate and what their success is post-graduation, not just on our winning day-to-day or week-to-week. It is a big factor in our position in their lives. So those intangibles become really, really important. You say we do work closely. We go through the tiers. We see everything. For international players, or as we see international players, your home-based players, it's a big deal for them to move to the United States and be a long way from parent. And we're the ones on the other end trying to, make them feel more comfortable. And it's just so much easier when you have a great person that's going to do what they're asked. They're highly motivated, self-motivated. We're not asking them to do stuff that they don't want to do. We know they want to be doing stuff. It's so much easier when you get a player like that. It's enjoyable for us to work with. As I'm sure you find it. I'm sure you find that in your squads, in your regional setups, in your national setups. It's so much easier when you've got a dedicated bunch of players, because that grows the group as well. So yes, they're all individual, but they train every day together. Imagine your squad situation every day. If that environment is not correct, it's just toxic. It's really hard, and that's where you see schools fluctuate so much in their results, is because they have good groups and good players They rarely have a bunch of great players in a toxic environment. It just brings them all down. And that's where you see, if you look at the history, you'll have seen, okay, well, such and such a player was such a great player when he left England and he went to XYZ school. What happened? Why has he not pushed on? You can always look for the intangible. It's not a talent thing. It's not talent. It's what pushes players through talent to reach success. That's hard to see, but it's what we have to look for. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
See a
Matt.
couple
Thanks,
of-
Steve.
see a
Yeah.
couple of
Sean,
questions.
Sean, do you want to ask away?
Hi there. Yeah, hi Matt.
Hey, Sean.
I'm with the North Region Girls manager,
Great to meet you.
very mediocre golfer, sorry. We've had a lot of girls come through the system from
Yeah.
the North.
Absolutely.
Jess Baker, obviously.
Yeah.
Rosie Belsham, Rachel Gawley, Charlotte Norton now. But my question is, and it's hard to ask the parents this because it's possibly a bit sensitive. Financially and in terms of fees and what they get, what do they get from that in terms of if they were to come to Florida State and get a scholarship, what level of scholarship relates to their level of golf or their academic ability? If we're selling it to them as you should go to university in America.
That's a really good question, a pretty loaded question too, because everybody, again, every school is different, Sean, I'll tell you that. But as an overview and a broad view, I will say girls in particular, and I know we've got some boys, a lot of boys coaching on here too, and the boys and girls situation is slightly different because of the rules over here. Girls should be getting a full scholarship, a full cost of attendance scholarship. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't cost anything. There are still costs in terms of travel, day-to-day living costs. If they want to go out shopping or to the cinema or whatever, we're not going to cover that stuff. But in terms of tuition fees, they'll get a stipend for living and a stipend for food, which if they manage well, it really shouldn't cost them anything. Players have done really well here and come out not owing anything. They come out with pretty much they get a degree for nothing with a great experience. You should get that. You really, really should. I think girls golf in particular is the most underutilized scholarships in the country across any sport. So there are so many scholarships out there. The difficult part comes if they have a particular school in mind that's already promised out their scholarship. So if money is the only driving factor, you will find 100% scholarship. My encouragement is to not make it the only driving factor. But if it is, you can cover it. It's not a headcount sport, so it's not guaranteed across every school to offer a full scholarship. And that's where I have a tough time answering that because every school is different. But in terms of opportunities, you should every girl, especially at your level, regionals and national squads, any female player, they have to get a full school. If they're not, they're being undersold, and the coach is kind of trying to pull the wool over their eyes a little bit. They will get a incredible opportunity. I can promise that at the top D1 level too. The boys are slightly different, although you will see in these next year or two, the boys offers almost matching the girls. And it's the difference is historically we were only able to offer so many. There was an Equality Act, and girls we used to get 6 scholarships to spread amongst the team for females and only 4.5 for boys. And the boys teams are typically bigger. So a 50% scholarship for a boy historically has been incredible. A very, very high scholarship, but you will start to see that balance out in this next year. I'm sure you'll start to see a lot of full scholarship offers. Now, I think it's probably a good time to bring up making sure all your players ask incredibly strong and detailed questions of any coach they're talking to, because every coach is different. Every coach has strengths and weaknesses. every coach here is a salesperson. You know, they are used to selling, and they are used to telling the players, sorry, what they want to hear. Sadly, it's led to a lot of cases where they're not selling a reality. So asking full questions, a lot of people say a full scholarship, but they'll hide elements that you're not aware of. And they're, they'll tell you that they're going to get something, but then you see it in writing and it comes out at 80%, and then you start asking questions. There's more money available. The hard part as a coach is we're not allowed to write it down until a bit later on down the line. So you have to have that trust with a coach and ask the right questions so that you've at least got the verbal details from a coach. And I'll break it down for you if that's the best way to do it. So you've got different elements of a scholarship. Tuition is one. Room and board are the big ones, but then you have another element called cost of attendance. Now, cost of attendance is an extra payment that is designed to help those day-to-day expenses of travel or buying a computer or those little fees and things that add up over a year. And every school is different. It depends on where it is. The travel element, it's a government figure that, schools can't just make it up. It's a government figure, but it's usually around, let's say, $4,000 to $5,000. So that's a yearly expense added on to cost of living, food, and the tuition. That is a full scholarship. A lot of coaches will leave that cost of attendance element out, and that's when the elements or the cost to parents add up. But I will say, over 4 years, you usually get such good value for money. You can, for parents, the cost of having a child at home plus going into debt at whichever university, student fees and things like that, the costs are tremendously low here. If you did well and you managed your money, like I said, you could actually come out with a little bit of money. If you're crazy and you go shopping every weekend and all that kind of stuff, then you're going to waste it. But if you manage things well, a full scholarship should be more than enough.
Okay, thanks. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Thanks, Matt. Mark, do you want to fire away?
Yeah, hi, Matt. Thank you.
Hey,
I think you've just sort of really confirmed what I've observed over the years, which is prepare yourself with your family and get yourself your CV ready, play and perform the best level you can, and keep up your academics, and the tier ones will come after you. You don't need to get an agent to go after the tier ones. And why I say that, I think that's really relevant to the kids, is I've seen over certainly the last few years, but it's been growing and growing. Every single player that now comes onto a regional squad and even is in a county squad are now applying because they think it's the right thing to do. They're now at age of 11, 12, 13. I've got parents paying thousands of pounds to agencies when all they're really going to do, which is a tier 2, which might be a life-changing thing for them. They may go on to great things. But a question I asked this forum of the England hierarchy here and the various people probably 2 or 3 years ago now was how many in boys game, not the girls, so different. India might be different than the girls, but in the boys game, how many went to a tier 2 and have actually household names on either the PGA Tour or the European Tour. And we asked ourselves during COVID, a whole group of us around here, and I think we came out with one player that had gone from a tier 2 to a tier 1, which I think was Ben Taylor at the time. I think there's been 1 or 2 since. And there was one player, I can't remember who it was, from a tier 2 that was a household name. Otherwise, those that have performed at the highest level on the highest tours have all gone to tier 1s, where tier 1s came after them. And I think that's a message almost to get to the parents almost.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would. I think players are going to find a way. a great player is going to find a way to become great, no matter where they are. But I think people waste a lot of money, like you say, on agencies promising things that they can't promise. And I think there's a stigma amongst college coaches as well for agencies too. You know, we like I say, my job is to find players. Every top tier college has people like me and others that go out and research and watch players and watch a lot of golf, and it's our job to find them. So letting that situation play out is vitally important. The only drawback occasionally is what we see is development time. Like occasionally there's delays. There's great players that kind of sprout later, shall we say, and they can end up at a lower tier college, but they find a way. They'll transfer in years gone past. We've had players probably familiar with a lot of you guys. Dan Bradbury went to a lower level school but transferred to Florida State because of COVID eligibility, things like that. And it was then his year at Florida State that hopefully springboarded. A big part, that's something we do need to talk about, is PGA Tour U and the LPGA's new accelerated system. The top level college teams are pretty, what's the best way to, they'll gather together, they'll create tournaments that, I'm just going to backtrack, sorry, just slightly, just to make sure everybody's aware of how the college system works. We are only committed to 3 scheduled events, which is the conference tournament at the end of the year, the regional tournament, and the national tournament. Every event in our regular season is invitational events or run by the colleges. So we can go to whatever events we want to, play against any team we want to. So what environment that creates is the top teams playing against each other week in, week out. That means that for a system that is based off the WAGA system, that the field levels are so much higher at the top level colleges. So your points accumulating for PGA Tour U is where you'll find every top level player being at every top level school, because it's incestuous in that respect. You gain all your points by playing against the best players. Every school is trying to promote, come to us because we'll help you get on the PGA Tour U system. And every player, as it should be, is looking for opportunities to play. And that's what the great things about the college system at the top tier is. There is opportunities to go on and play based on how you played in college. And it's the same on the LPGA's accelerated system, which Lottie did an amazing job taking advantage of that. A lot of her golf and ways through that accelerated system, though, was performing at major championships and the Anwar and things like that. There isn't quite the full system, but there will be. There will be. The girls' system is coming exactly the same as the PGA Tour U, which will come off their college-based tournaments. It just means that gap between top level is going to grow. So that's important to know that these teams are going to come after the top players, and we will find them to go on and then have amazing careers. You know, it's hard to break out of those second tiers now because the opportunities post college, you have to wait as traditional. You wait for Q schools and wait for the opportunities, and they're just not there. And that's why I think you see a lot of the top players, like you say, the top tier players come out of top tier programs, and that's only going to get worse, or more and more common. So I think it is a big point that you make, is that a couple of things. The players need to ensure that they're doing everything in their power to become great, and we will find them. They don't need to worry too much about the recruitment process. It will take care of itself by them playing great golf and concentrating on what they do with you guys and going off and playing, having great summers. We will find them. but you all will deal with players that aren't quite at that level. And that's where that is the hardest job, I will say, is having those honest conversations with parents of players that you know are not quite at that level, finding them a spot which pushes them and pushes them to go on and be good and be great, but ultimately enjoy that process. There's no point pushing a player into a top level program that you know can't make it, and they just sit here and don't play. You know, it's a hard thing to do, and it's hard to say to somebody you're not good enough. And it's, you kind of can't just say that, but helping them find and explaining that their only path to being better is to put them in the right environment. We've had so many players go to big schools and not play. It's devastating. But if they'd find them understanding that going to a lower tier school, finding a place to play, finding a place that will push them, and then potentially moving on in the future, like Dan Bradbury, could be a great way forward. And that's an unenviable task that you all have when you have those kind of players. But you have anybody in the national squads, I would say probably half of each regional squad will all be scouted. We will find you. We will find you for sure.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Paul, did you have your hand up? Paul Preble? I thought I saw it.
I did, but Matt pretty much covered it. It was just asking really about realism of players' expectations. And I know certainly from my region, I've had players come over to the States, not played, and have come back and said, "Oh, I hated that." They would have been better off going to a tier 2 school and doing really well, and then you may have taken them on in year 2 or 3 anyway. The realism of parents and players is something for us at regional level to manage, but as you say, not easy to do, but will be better for them in the long run.
Absolutely. And honestly, Paul, better for us too. We want players that can, yes, we want to keep improving them, but it's no good for anybody just not playing. You know, it's miserable for a player. It's hard for a coach. We're challenging them, but they're just not breaking into that lineup. And most squad sizes are going to be 8-9 players, and we travel with 5. So there's 4 or 5 players missing out every week. And if you're on that side of things and missing out every week, it's hard to maintain motivation over 4 years and then come out and do something. Plus, you've missed so much competitive golf at a really crucial time in their development. I think it's a big thing that the players are honest and without crushing them, that they understand. And that, again, that's the delicate part, is how do you explain to a player what the most important factors are, and playing time has to be number one. It has to be number one for every player going out there. Yeah, I'm sure you've got a lot of inflated egos out there that believe they should be at the top schools. That's the problem, and parents too. How to manage that is difficult.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, man.
No worries.
Just before. Oh yeah, go on, Ben.
Just a quick one, Matt. You mentioned squad sizes, and I know obviously recently there was a lot of talk around squad sizes being reduced and then it's been pushed back. Has it been stopped altogether, so they stay in what they currently are, or is it just pushed back a couple of years? Can you just give us an update on that, please?
Yeah, so the ruling is we are at 9. Every school is allowed 9 players on their roster. Again, this is where these rules become so confusing, is because each conference can then make a ruling, but they can't go over 9. With the exception of when that rule was made, I think it was September time, the judge that made the ruling wanted to grandfather in all current players or currently signed players, which meant that no player would lose their spot on a roster just because the ruling was made. So if a team had 10, we were originally thought that we'd have to just cut a player and that was it. We were just told, but the judge made sure that those players weren't losing out on opportunities. So for the next 4 years, basically, you will see rosters that will fluctuate over that 9, but it's because those players have been grandfathered into the system. After 4 years, you should see that no roster is over 9 players, on both men and women. That should be the max, because those grandfather players would have graduated on. We're not allowed to sign more and kind of wait and cut one late or anything like that. We can only sign up to our number. But it just takes that few years to get those grandfathered players off the rosters to settle into a number of 9, which it should, in theory, then allow players and teams maybe in those lower down to pick up more players and potentially spread the depth across the country a little bit. We'll see how that pans out. Most, historically, top teams have hoarded the best players. And that's where you've seen great players go to great programs and not play. We should hopefully potentially see some depth spread and more and more schools taking on great players.
That's great. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Ben.
If anyone does have any more questions, please do put your hand up. Just while we wait for that, you mentioned it before you mentioned the word factors, Matt. What, in your opinion, are the most important factors to consider when recruiting a player? Or sorry, when a player's looking to choose a destination, what factors are most important for them to consider?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jamie. I think from the player's perspective, the number one, I guess I'll reiterate, has to be playing time, which is a hard thing to predict but then that's when they've got to look at current rosters and really talk to the coaches to see what they would predict as their playing time. It's never a guarantee. But when you look at a current roster, if you see a roster that you're going to go into, which is going to be quite old and experienced, how many of those players are on there? So how much of those, seniors, especially in boys golf, I will say, because the physical difference between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old is pretty huge. A little different in women's golf, but potential playing time is massive. If somebody comes in and says, well, you're just going to ride the bench or you'll be our 5-6 player, I think finding that perfect pitch of about the 3 to 4 player, so you've always got players better than you, but you're going to play a lot and learn a lot, I think is key for most pro. If you go in there as the number one player, obviously the number one player, and you're not really pushed by anybody, that can be difficult. So finding that right balance of pretty much guaranteed playing time as long as they do the right things and making sure you're pushed at the same time, that has to be number one. Historically, you'd always then say weather is a huge factor. We talked about weather as we came on the call. It is obviously a huge advantage for a southern school to have all year round weather, but there is amazing opportunities up north, but you just have to be prepared for it the right way. There's really, really cold states in the American this time of year. There's places that you won't see grass for 3 or 4 months, so you got to be careful. And remember what I said earlier about salespeople, and they're only going to show you the good stuff. So they'll show you the pictures from the fall when it's nice and sunny and green. They won't show you what it's like in the wintertime when it's white for a long time, or icy or frosty, So weather is a factor, but ultimately you can get around some of that stuff if the facilities are good enough. So I'd say 2 and 3 as a combination, as the facilities and the coaches. You have to know you're going somewhere that has an environment that provides everything a player needs to get better. And I think that's a coach and facility combination. You're going to be around the coach, like I say, every day for 4 years. You need to ask hard questions. Are they going to support you through thick and thin, or when it gets hard, are they just going to drop you? Can they provide the information you need? Can they communicate with you guys as instructors and coaches to help that development continue? You know, you guys have done the work up to that point. They've got better and better. Can the relationship continue? There's a lot of factors that a coach brings. Or are they just a bus driver? You know, are they just taking you to events and sitting back and watching and letting you do your thing? That could be fine for some people. That could be absolutely fine. And you know, having a player really sit down and think, what do they want out of a coach, is really important, because every coach is different. But I think it's important that you get the right coach for you as a player. So that has to be that in conjunction with facilities. I think, you know, you get a bad coach in good facilities, I don't think that works. You get a great coach with no facilities, that doesn't work. It has to be a combination of the two. And then the weather would come underneath that. And academics is kind of overall of that. That would depend on the kind of type of player you have. You might have somebody who's really, you know, a solid golfer, but maybe not somebody that's gonna, you don't think is going to make it, but a great student that might want an Ivy League education and become a world beater for Harvard or Princeton. That could be an amazing opportunity for him. If you want a blend of difficult school with great athletics, there's so many schools out there. And then you get some that are just going to be golf, and school doesn't really matter. So that really has an important factor to getting the right players. For me, it would, I think, thinking back as a player, it has to be playing opportunities, coach and facilities, and then weather and academics. Hopefully, most likely in that order.
Thanks, Matt. Jenny?
Hiya, Matt.
Hey, Jen.
So I know we've had this conversation a bit over the past year, but really interested kind of for the benefit of the group, the shift in the recruitment process that we're kind of seeing, and I think we'll continue to see. I wonder if you could kind of share your thoughts for incoming classes. What kind of trends are you seeing? How is things like, dare I mention, the NIL piece building into the recruitment process? How is it kind of shifting in terms of timelines? Just kind of, I guess, some thoughts on the future recruitment processes that you're kind of anticipating and seeing.
Yeah. I'll probably answer it in two separate ways. I think let's talk about NIL first, which is, for anybody who's not aware, it's name, image, likeness. It has shifted massively in this last year. And there was a point a year ago where schools could set up and pay players through a third party, and you'd end up with players that, you know, average players being offered silly amounts of dollars to come and play at a school. Thankfully, and on the back end of that, for real, no huge name, image, likeness responsibilities either. And that's what it was supposed to be for. It was supposed to initially came in to allow players to sell their image rights for sponsorship, etc. That has now thankfully changed for somewhat the better. Schools can pay players directly, but for golf, we are seeing now that NIL is, in terms of schools directly paying players, golf just isn't a revenue sport here in the United States, so schools aren't really paying the money. You might get a few schools offering, but what I've seen is the schools that are offering players NIL money directly from themselves are environments that you really wouldn't necessarily think of being successful. And I don't really want to call out any particular schools, that's not fair, but if you just think about the important factors we talked about, there is no way a player would get into some of or go to some of these schools for any smart golf reason, other than the finances. And that's a difficult thing for families that are maybe not as well off, and they see the dollar signs, but they're down the line, that it's just not worth it. So you're starting, NIL is kind of drifting out, other than you'll still be a factor, but it's going to be back to, as it should be, the top level players will get money from manufacturers or things like that, and that's just kind of as it used to be, and will continue to be. I think as golf programs, it's great now to kind of take the NIL factor out, and the players, just like you talked about earning a space at a top level program, it's those same top level players that are going to be able to earn money from various sponsorship opportunities. But that'll be that we can't have anything to do with that. That's a manufacturer going directly to a player and offering them money. That's fine. We can't do that, and that's what we were able to do a while ago. And it was I'm talking, a golfer was offered $500,000 to come and play, and it was just crazy money for an average player too. It was out of control. So thankfully that has been reined back in, and I just can't see it ever being a factor for any player moving forward. The timeline is really, really interesting. It really has become, I think if think of it as both ways. The players want to get interest from as many schools as possible. What that means is that we're all fighting for the same group of players. So every school is fighting for the top players. We want the top players, the top characters on all our teams. But there's so many opportunities. So we're all fighting for the same pool of players. So what that's done is sped up the recruiting process. So once that June 15th date hits, that window becomes such a small window to get to know everybody in the family, and get to know all the background of the player, come and watch 1 or 2 tournaments in the summer, to potentially visiting in August. We can then visit, the first available date to visit would be the 1st of August. And teams are, if they don't ask for a commitment on June 15th, it probably comes in July, and then it's visits in August. And then you see a lot of schools are asking for commitments before visits, or commit to us, then come and visit. It really has compressed everything, and it feels like a lot of pressure on the player. And that's the bad part. It is a bad part. Players are feeling pressurized by these salespeople. Again, they're feeling pressurized, and they're taking offers that they perhaps don't want to, but they're worried about losing out on other offers. Because the reality is that if somebody doesn't commit, then we need to bring in other players, and they might commit, and then they'll lose their spots now that the roster is capped. It's a balancing act of trying to get the right players. For us as coaches, we don't want to miss out on everybody, so we're trying to get players earlier, so we make sure it really has made things challenging for both sides. A great player, though, will hold all the cards. They need to know that they can take their time, because there is opportunities out there. If they're not tied to one particular school, then they need to kind of be really, really comfortable. We're allowed 5 visits. Take your 5 visits. You're actually allowed more, but I wouldn't go over 5. Take 5 visits. See everything you need to know. Be really comfortable and make that decision. If you have a player that really wants to come to Florida State and that's it, that's when it's tough. But Florida State, if it's reciprocal, then we'll try and do our best to, or any school would do their best to bring you in and bring the players in, and make the visits happen as early as possible to kind of get things over the line. But you have to warn the parents and the players that it's going to be an incredibly quick, fast turnaround with a lot of things moving on. Historically, we used to wait a lot of times until maybe that October half term, and then potentially even into January, for players to make visits and make the commitments. But the pressure just seems to have ramped up on both sides, and I think it is based to the roster cap situation. But parents have to be aware of it. I would certainly educate them to say, look, you might want to prepare some time at the end of August, or hopefully maybe right before school starts in September, or even have conversation with schools. Are they allowed a little bit of time off to go and make these visits? Because they have to visit. They absolutely have to visit before making a firm commitment. It would be crazy to commit without knowing a lot about the school. I understand committing pending a visit. I completely understand that, but full commitment and not visiting anywhere else is crazy. It's crazy. There's so many things that we can show you online that make things look great, just like Instagram. You know, it's not reality. These players have to visit the schools. Ideally more than one school. We'd always push a player to visit at least one other school, if not more, because the way I look at it is I want a player to know. I want to know a player is 100% committed and not always kind of looking if, what if, or what about this school? What about that? No, they've kind of gone through their due diligence and they've said, no, Florida State's exactly where I want to be. So I know when it is hard, I can push them, or what they know they're in the right spot, versus if it's to go and gets tough and they just quit and think, oh, I should have gone to our neighbors down the road. You know, that they could transfer out and quit on us. So I feel it's really, really, really important to get visits done, but it's a incredibly quick process. And again, there's no great solution to it. It's just to be aware of it. I wouldn't have players thinking they can take the time. So if you think back to the timeline, they're essentially got maybe a couple of months to have actual conversations with these coaches and programs, go and visit, and then you'll be asked for commitment early. That does bring about the situation where they know where they're going pretty much 2 years out, but it's just quick. And that's where then you stem back again. Can we get more information? Can you do your research before that June 15th? Try and maybe you as intermediaries, coaches, find out what the interest level is prior to, so to stop people kind of going the wrong way, or going down an alleyway there's no opportunities there, that kind of stuff. Because when it does hit, especially the highly recruited players, it's a lot slower for those, let's say, tier 2 players, or those that don't have the immediate I guess success in that summertime. It is a lot slower, and there is still opportunities out there. I know there's still teams looking for players now for the next fall. So it's not be all end all, but for a top level player, it's going to be quick, and they need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Hope that answers your question, Jenny.
Real. Thank you, Matt. I'm aware we're probably taking a little bit more of your time, but that was brilliant. If anyone has got any last sort of questions, you can ask now, but I think we've all learned so much and taken loads of notes and things, and yeah, just a reminder, we have recorded it, so we'll send it out to everyone who hasn't made the call this evening. But yeah, just massive thank you, Matt. There's like loads of information there that I think we've all taken away, and it's just like reminders of things like what's important when you're picking a school, really.
Yeah.
Going back to it all, like the basic stuff there that you've said, like literally like playing time, will you go out there and actually play golf? So yeah, just sort of reminds us all. But yeah, I think loads of key messages there for us all.
I'll say to everyone too, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. India, can you share my email address?
Yeah.
I'll answer any questions at any point. If there's anything that didn't get asked, or you know, I'd love to connect with all of you. You may have players that you want to highlight for me, and vice versa, but do that for all the coaches too. You get some snowy days in the future, hopefully not, but if you get some downtime and you're kind of bored, just reach out to a few, and that's when you'll start to learn about characters, and you'll start to build a profile of schools yourself that you know, you're happy to send players to. I think that's important for you guys to be a big part of it. big part of the process, big part of their ongoing development. So just reach out, get to know, say, hey, I'm India Clyburn, England Golf. We've got so many players, love to get to know you a little bit. And I think communication and relationships are going to be really important. So I'd love to hear from any of you guys. Any of you say, you know, hey, just want to pick your brain a little bit more. We can do that. Or, hey, I've got some players to keep an eye out. We'll see you in the summer. I'll be there back in the summer, most likely. If we're walking the fairways a little bit, say hi to the coaches. Yeah, it goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so many now at the event, so it's
so many,
quite good.
So many. Yeah,
you get to meet
so
them
many.
all.
Yeah.
Awesome, brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. I'll just
thank
end
you,
the
everyone.
recording.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Matt.
it. No worries. See you all soon.